Ladies and gentlemen around the world, or good morning from Melbourne and from Queensland. Today we've chosen a different time to suit Gavin, Todd and Karen Neaton, now in Australia. Now, what we're going to talk about today is the PolyVagal Theory, and we're going to utilise the fact that Gavin is a horse communicator. Now, if you think about it, what we do when we communicate with one another, we always show our hands, our face, even our feet. We notice sometimes that we get a lump in the stomach or a lump in the throat. All of those things show us that not only is our speech how we communicate, but we communicate with our bodies. Karen is going to speak about the polyvagal theory and how that is what operates in us, what shows us behind the scenes what's going on. Welcome, Karen, and welcome, Gavin.
Thank you, Rose.
Okay. Karen is also an ISTDP psychotherapist, so we sort of, I suppose, speak similar language. So, and Gavin does it out there on the arena. So, welcome, Gavin. Okay, so Karen, please, again, give us a little bit of background so that our audience, if they haven't seen you before, they've got an idea of how you've come to all this knowledge. And then we'll bring in Gavin, if that's all right.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Rose. Thank you for inviting me back, and thank you for letting me choose the topic today. I'm so passionate about the polyvagal theory. I'm a registered nurse, which is how I met Rose a lifetime ago, and we've both trained as ISTDP therapists, which helped us in our bedside to understand more about what our patients were trying to communicate to us. And subsequently to all of that, I've learned about the polyvagal theory in regards to studying shivering in the perioperative environment. So the polyvagal theory gives us a new way to understand things that are happening in the patients or just even in ourselves. So Stephen Porges has coined the term, and he's developed the theory, and he's an academic essentially, but so many clinicians have got on board with his theory because it just explains some of the things that we could never explain. And just to give a little bit of history, like anatomy-wise, we're going to talk about the vagus nerve. And the cranial nerves, they were discovered back in 200 AD when doctors used to do, studies on gladiators that were killed in the arena, and they didn't have microscopes or anything. So when you think about it, they did an amazing job. But since then, in the medical schools, and when I learned nursing 30 years ago, and even until really recently, they were teaching that there were 10 cranial nerves and that the vagus nerve did this. But now we know that the vagus nerve is more than one nerve. So they've found out that it's got more than one fiber, and it branches off and it does more things than we know. So with the vagus nerve, back when I learnt my nursing 30 years ago, it was rest and relax state or fight flight. That's all we learned, fight flight or relaxed. And so we learnt about the vagus nerve popping up and down and changing our state from those two things. But what has subsequently been identified is a freeze state. And so this other branch of the vagus nerve goes and it sort of manages that reaction that people have. And so that's an overview where freeze now comes in, and we can understand so many more behaviours in relation to, okay, the vagus nerve is creating this for us. Yeah.
Talk about the freeze response post-operatively, because it's very interesting that it's very common post-operatively, isn't it? People have been anaesthetized, and then all of a sudden, like, they've been shut out, but obviously they're unconscious, whatever is still operating, and then when they come out.
Yeah, so so there's there's a bundle of nerves in our body that are called make up the autonomic nervous system, and they sort of run around, and they are the ones regulating our heart rate and our bowels and kidneys, and just communicating all these things to our body all the time, keeping us breathing while we're asleep. They do this magnificent job, in the unconscious, out of our awareness. So what they have found that the freeze response comes in regards to life threat. So it's sort of like a hierarchy of responses. So ideally, we can be in a relaxed state, and that enables us to want to connect, be social, be close to people, reach out, and do fun things. Okay, but if there's a stress that puts us into fight flight, then we get activated. We need to run, or we need to fight, something like that. So with freeze, that channel is activated when there's a life threat. So it's the next step up. Safe and secure, risk of danger, life threat. So if our body's perceiving a life threat, it channels a different pathway. So it makes us freeze. And, this is a lot more common, or we've seen it in the animal world, and something that maybe Gavin can talk a little bit more about. But, we know that animals can play dead in order to avoid, being captured and a predator. That's right.
Yeah.
So
would you mind talking about freeze, not so much post-operatively, but freeze when someone has a relationship with someone, or they're asked a question, and then the freeze response comes in? How's that life-threatening?
okay, so it's going to be different for everybody, but what we need to understand is that if we're having a freeze response, there is a life threat. So it's about trusting our body and trying to understand what's going on for us. So if perhaps, for example, Rose, if you said to me, how's your day going today, Karen? And I just froze and found I couldn't speak. It could be the content of the question. It could be that we're live across the universe. We don't know, but it's nice to be curious and think, okay, I can't speak right now. I'm feeling in freeze. What's happening in me, and to be curious. So is it that I'm going to be seen? Is it that something I'm going to say makes me look stupid? So we do things, and we have ideas in our lives that make us do things because we've internalized an idea that we can be, seen as flawed, seen as silly, something wrong with us. And as mammals, we've developed this need for social inclusion as part of our primary safe and secure makeup. So if there was something that, my unconscious thought was, I'm not going to be approved of, I could be exiled for saying something like this, then that will just automatically shut things down to stop me taking that risk. Yeah.
How does that pan out in animals, Gavin?
Well, I'll talk in different lot of language, because we could say that if a horse is thinking, it has access to its brain, but if it reacts, well, then it's got the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, pretty much. And fawn is, don't hurt me, humans do this. And when a horse is a foal, not all of them do it, but most of them do this mouthing bit, which is supposed to be saying, hey, I'm just looking for a drink of milk, I'm no threat, and they do this sort of stuff. Now, I have seen adult horses feeling threatened and stressed. I had one in a square yard once, and I was asking it to move around the yard, but it was shut down because it'd been trained not to think or show too much movement. So it was moving in a very slow way. When I said, come on, you can do more than that, it blocked me out and just shut down and moved slowly. When I said, I think you can do more, and then it ran into a corner. It was almost headbutting the corner. The mouth was going, I'm a little foal. So it was trapped in a stable in a corner, but it was a big yard. but the back end, both back legs were firing kicks repeatedly out at me. So the front end was a foal trying to deal with the stress, but the back end was very much in that fight phase at me. So that was incredible seeing that horse. And so I eventually got the horse out the corner. I wasn't touching it. It was all at complete liberty. And then once it started to move properly, and then it accessed the thinking part of its brain, and then it was fine.
So what's actually happening, Karen?
Well, there's a perceived threat, and so the changes that activate by
like the kicking out is to push the threat away. So in actual fact, Gavin was the threat, yes?
Because yes.
Or was it a memory that was a threat?
It was the memory, because I triggered a memory, and horses do that.
Can you talk a little bit about that and how you actually happen to undo it? It's important that we have a memory, and that memory was a bad memory, and then the circumstances come back again, and we anticipate that we're going to have that bad memory happen again. Yeah? Yeah. So when that horse kicked out at you, how did you actually communicate with it to actually settle it?
I realised I don't take it personal, because if I take it personal, I get triggered and I make it worse. So all I did was, I was at a distance. I might have had a little stick with a little flag to wave at it from a distance, and I just tried to put myself on the fence to try and give it an avenue out, and eventually I got it to go out and move. But when it would move slow, that was like a shutdown, resentful part of it. And I call it, that horse had been institutionalized. It's like it's been in a prison or a strict school or any sort of organization, wasn't allowed to think, wasn't allowed to express itself. And so when I finally got it to move more, then the body moved, and then the brain started to free up too, and then it could think.
Good. Okay. Actually, that's interesting, isn't it? That once the body moves, the brain, the neocortex or whatever of the horse, comes online.
Because when the brain shuts down, like when I'm talking about freezing,
the amygdala then kicks in.
Yeah, the body's stiff and rigid, just like the brain. But a bit more is that if a horse, we imagine it was threatened and it had room, it would run first. But after it runs for, say, about 400 meters, it would then turn its head, turn its body. You can't see, but the inside hind leg would step underneath. And when the horse's body's in that shape, it's in the reassess. And then it says, oh, I wonder if it's still chasing me. It looks, if there's no threat, it wiggles its ears, it blinks, starts to move. It might go, oh, that's all it is.
It's all done.
And so when you can change the shape of a horse into a curve, and that's what I was trying to do to get it to curve out the corners, you access the thinking part of the brain.
Tell me that again.
Well, if a horse is straight and it puts its head
straight
up
ahead, you're riding it straight ahead?
Yes, or any time. When it gets triggered, the head will be up, it's rigid. It's looking in the distance because it's already picked where it's going, but it can't think. All it can do is react. But when the head drops, it curves to the side and it's starting to curve, and the hind leg is stepping forward and underneath. The brain opens up and it can think. So that's why a circle or a curve works if it's vertical, because if it's leaning, the horse is braced and it's scrambling and it's falling over. So you practice this on the ground in a heap of different ways.
Yeah. Is that why they at Pony Club the kids have to go in and out and around and diagonals and things like that?
Maybe not. it can be part of it, but it's
Would it be a calming effect?
it can be if the
Yeah,
horse
that's what I
isn't
was thinking.
leaning.
If the horse can think, I don't know. The other question is, Karen, how does that apply to us?
Yeah, so how does that apply to us? So, for humans, movement can also, bring us back to or out of this freeze response. So, swimming or running, those sorts of things. But, being in the hospital situation and we've got someone post-operatively or we're sitting as therapists, what are the sort of things we can do as people or even within our families to help somebody who's gone into that state? And Stephen Porges has also coined a term called social engagement strategies. And so they are linked to sending a signal of safety to our nervous system. So it's a bit like Alan the Bass, reaching through the resistance. We actually need to speak to the nervous system to say, you're safe now. So, biologically, the things that send a message of safety to a mammal is the actions of a mother. So the tone of voice of a woman that's, settling her child, eye contact, prosody of voice. So you have to think of that calming, soothing type of behavior. And so, eye contact, smile, prosody of the voice, and just getting that tone right, that soothing tone. Yeah, and something else that they call therapeutic touch, which is not a there, you're okay. It's a I've got you, like a firm grip, and that sends a message to the nervous system that you're safe, I've got you.
Tell me, how does a person do that for themselves if they haven't got someone like that in their lives?
Yeah, so, the social engagement strategies are obviously between two people. So, but there are ways that you can try to calm your vagus nerve yourself. Yeah. So there's.
I mean, I was just thinking about doing something like that, for example. That's what came to my mind.
There are different trauma therapies that do have these sorts of things. So, cradling yourself and having a rocking motion, and then that sends a message of safety. There's also this really wonderful exercise that I read about that's been developed by some craniosacral practitioners. And it's an exercise that you clasp your hands, like you interlock your fingers like that, and then you put them at the back of your head like this. And so you can do it lying down or you can do it sitting up. But then the idea is you rest your head into your hands so you can feel the pressure, the bones from your head as well as from your hands. And then you look as far right as you can with your eyes for up to 30 seconds, 1 minute, until you get either a sigh or a yawn, a message like that comes. And then you do it to the other side. And what those movements do, because the cranial nerves all come out at this one point that involves like the ocular, the ocular nerve as well, that sends a signal of safety and calms the vagus nerve from the sending those signals to the dorsal vagal.
So when we're talking to someone and they go like this, they're actually calming themselves. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, they could be, that's right. Like these innate behaviours in us that, you see someone relaxing on a beach, that's what I think of. And I think, of how the relaxed body and, or trying to relax them, that there's certain poses that are not only just, for, I don't know, that's a comfortable position, but there must be something behind it that then explains why you would go into that.
Incredible, isn't it? Now, Karen, when we were talking the other day, when we were talking about this meeting, and we put the picture up of Gavin doing this, and you said you'd talk about that. So that,
Yeah.
Was I doing something like this?
I think in the photo promoting, you just had your hands clasped, and I thought, that just reminded me of that exercise.
No, it was this.
Was I near a horse at the time?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because maybe what I was trying to demonstrate to people is keep your hands to yourself.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Keep your hands to yourself. Like if Karen's the horse, horses are fine-tuned personal space. They understand. Now, horses are better at reading human body language than humans are. Whatever you think comes out in your body language, and they immediately know everything about you. And they're hearing, and they can hear heartbeats and know everything. So the senses are so attuned. So if I negotiate with Karen, obviously we're pretty close, it's hard to say. But if Karen, the horse, is now comfortable with me here, but I do this, I've just lied, and you immediately leant back. So if a horse is not sure, I'll actually turn a little bit to the side, and I'll look away because your eyes are very powerful and your energy comes out your belly button, your chi, and I'm not pushing that at the horse, and I'm letting that horse come to me and feel safe. But the worst thing I can do is, and then try to touch you. Or if I say, I'm keeping my distance, but my hand's there, I'm a liar, right? So keep your hands to yourself. And that makes you calm. And usually your energy's centered and it's calm. It's not radiating out of you. So horses are so perceptive about zones. Humans don't too, but we've forgotten. I always say, how do you know when you greet someone? Do you hug them? Do you kiss them? Do you shake hands? Do you go and then withdraw because you can feel their zone? They're saying, don't come near.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when that happens, I'm just trying to apply this to humans. That's why so when we reach out to another human being, doesn't it also mean that there's no trust? If you go like that to another human being, there's no trust.
Well, for humans, everyone has their own state. So if I could be in a dorsal vagal state, which means shut down, and you might say, let's go for a walk. And then there's a process of coming out of that state before there's, I feel like, talking and opening up and making eye contact. So it's about, defrosting, if you like, out of that state. And so there's things that a friend could do, which is eye contact and not like penetrating someone's barrier and invading them to make them feel unsafe, to allow someone to come and sense the safety. Really, you can't give someone safety, you have to be safety. And then, as John Friedrich would co-regulate. But unless you're in that safety zone where you feel like connecting, and that you can maintain that tone of voice, because that'll change, right? If you are in a threatening situation, your voice might get squeaky, or you could get croaky, or you might slip with your voice. And the other person's nervous system is attuned to that. They go, they'll know before we know. Yeah. And so for us, like as nurses or as therapists or as horse trainers, to be safety, to let the others recognize and regulate in response to and as a midwife, Rose, you know a lot about that mother-baby dyad. That all the mother's got to do is be safe and secure, and the baby joins. And it's the same for us as adults, with friends, with partners, with patients, that if we can turn up as safety, they feel it. And that we can, I think I had a big conference with some anaesthetists and other therapists or people in the medical field that wanted to educate people about polyvagal. And they were saying things like loan them your nervous system until they can feel safe and secure. And so I keep that in my mind when I'm standing at the bedside and we're just about to knock someone unconscious chemically, right? But it has the same effect, right? Chemical or a blow to the temples, the body perceives it as life threat.
As a threat, yeah.
Right? And it is, right? Whether it's chemical or not. So I loan them my nervous system. I turn up as safe and secure, warm, eye contact, engaging, leaning forward, sending the message of safety, you're safe here with me, to allow them to then be in
Drop
safety.
their defenses, you mean?
Yeah, well, people only need to defend when it's fight, flight, right?
Mm.
Yeah, fight, flight, or freeze. If we want them to feel safe and secure, there's no need for defenses in that. We understand through therapy that when the defenses come or when people get anxious, we can now understand they've already moved out of safe and secure. Yeah.
Is there a chance to actually think about polyvagal theory in as much as we've learnt to freeze because of this vulnerability that's happening all the time? Like it's a past experience that gives us the idea. Like as Gavin was saying about the horse being restrained or institutionalized, can we actually now veer that over to people with chronic pain and how they've been institutionalized maybe to shut their own thoughts or feelings down?
Well, I think I've just recently had some new insight into this because from working inside the hospital, I interact with people that have had a bad experience in the hospital so many times. Mm-hmm. And so they're there under the banner of life threat because of past experiences. And that's become more acute for me because I've recently started a job in telehealth. And so people call up, we triage their symptoms. They're sitting at home safe and sound and they're happy to talk on the phone. And then we suggest to them, look, based on what you've said, you need to go to the emergency department. And they'll just go, freeze. They say, I'm not going there. That's not safe for me. Oh, this happened last time. That happened last time. So just the suggestion, go to hospital, can put them into a dorsal vagal state. And so they might just hang up the phone, go and lie in bed, curl up. They're not going to call an ambulance. They're not going to be active, to get help for themselves or anything like that, because they automatically shut down. So they don't want to talk anymore. It's the end of the road as far as negotiating. And then, so from that point, to get them to the hospital or to attempt, we need to understand that they're in dorsal vagal state and that we need to change what we do in order to make them feel safe enough to get help for themselves.
So how do you change?
Well, I try to use the tone of voice the same through the whole conversation. Mm-hmm. Once I realised that, maybe I've already talked to them for 10 or 15 minutes with that tone, and they still go into dorsal vagal, that there's another level that you need. And I think about, can I smile through the phone? Can I give them eye contact through the phone? It's obviously hard, but those sorts of things. But then just, you're really going to need to rely on your words and what you can say to make them,
to calm them,
act in their best interests. Yes.
Yeah.
And, and balance that risk, even just recognizing for them that they've been traumatized by the hospital, that was a terrible thing that happened to them at the time. But this current risk, whether it's their breathing or, the risk that they might be having a stroke or heart. Yeah, that's right. Chest pain. That what's happening now, it is worth, balancing that risk out and acting.
Yeah. I was thinking as you were speaking about patients who go in, they can no longer walk, or they're so collapsed, their back is given out on them, and they front up to the hospital, and then the hospital staff then dismiss their problem.
How
And that would
wonderful,
be,
how wonderful would it be, Rose, if everyone that came into ED was triaged based on where they were in their dorsal vagal state?
yeah,
Because if someone comes in and, obviously we know that in the medical system, they'll go and have a scan to eliminate any spinal tumors or things like that. But with all that, eliminated, we can go, these people are in dorsal vagal.
yeah,
The collapsed animal that is so terrified they need to feign death by losing the capacity to move their legs, and that what they need is our undivided love and attention and support to get them back to a sense of safety.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I would, that would be a dream, wouldn't it? That
Wouldn't
everyone
it? Yes.
can recognize it in themselves and in each other. Like,
Well, you see,
how
that's the other
wonderful.
thing. But we've got to recognize it in ourselves, though, don't we, first?
So we need to recognize it in ourselves, but if we can recognize it in our children, our partners, our patients, that, we can drop the judgment. Because, Dr. Porges, he got published this lovely research paper on date rape. And it was using this theory that there were women that were raped that never cried for help or never fought off their attackers. And so when he used the PolyVagal theory to explain that the threat of the attack, instead of someone having the capacity to fight and flight, they actually went into collapse, which is the freeze. They didn't speak, they didn't scream, and they appeared to just allow this invasion. And then they felt guilty for the rest of their lives. They didn't even tell anyone what had happened because they were so ashamed that they didn't cry out or fight it off. And Dr. Porges shares a letter that he got from a client saying, when I read this research paper, I cried because I finally understood what happened to me in that moment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we tried to interview a lady who wrote a book about rape like that, and she actually disassociated from herself, and in the toilet stall there was a bottle, and she smashed the bottle, and she was able to get away. But she said she was completely shut down, and then in that shutdown moment, she saw the bottle. So yeah, so it's an important thing that happens under threat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Now, talking to a lady this morning who works as riding for the disabled or something like that. I'm not quite sure what it is, what it's called in America. But, we were talking about horses' responses. Like when they flick their tails or turn their ears back, tell us about what their body does. You're saying about they're putting their heads down and turning around, bending. Just generally talk about what you see that
When the
tells
tail
you
moves,
the state of the horse.
when the tail moves, it's like a cat. A cat's ticked off at you, and then the horse is doing the same. If the tail's moving, it could be a fly or something, but if it's swishing, it's irritated with you. Ears, people get confused with completely because they think they go back. It's when humans talk about body language, they talk about clusters. So what's what the nose do? It's the posture. If the nose is stretched out and it's wrinkling the nose and the ears are back, well, then you better watch out. But you can be riding a horse, or if it's concentrating, and then both ears are on you because they're listening to me. And then if I'm on a horse and something happens over there, and then both ears go there, it's left me. I've got to say, what about me? And you want to bring both of them, and one might be checking that out, but you want it to be coming back to me, those ears. And, then your response could be, oh, that's pretty boring, right? So I'm not reassuring the horse and treating it like a child and, oh, there, I'll look after you. All it is I've just got to go relaxed and loosen all my muscles and say, yeah, it is a bit scary. How about we move over there a bit? And then a horse is looking for a leader, and a leader can make a decision when anything new happens. And yawning's a great decision. And then it could be, oh, this is a bit more scary for you than I realized. How about I keep yawning and we'll just move over there a bit more. So they need the leader to actually respond. But if you're silent or say, don't be stupid, they're terrible responses.
Right. Because, you know, when you're riding a horse and you put your knee against the rib cage sort of thing, they respond to that as well. And I'm thinking
in
that,
a wrong way. If you got your knee against them, you're actually pivoting the wrong way. You're putting pressure on and you're just putting pressure on, this just stresses the horse out. So if you start putting your knees on, you're going to go over between the ears of the horse and your center of gravity is gone.
Talk to us about that. Yeah. So when the kid sort of grabs the horse by the knees, as they do in Pony Club, yeah.
Knees are the worst thing to do. Sorry, that's.
What does it do to the horse, Rosie?
Well, you pivot on your knees. If the horse changes the direction or stops, you go that. So your knees are the worst part to grab hold of. You just dangle your legs around and you have to be standing on the stirrup. So you're sitting in the saddle and most of your weight's on your heels and hardly any on your backside, and your calves are giving the horse a gentle cuddle at the base. But if you squeeze, it's like a predator's jumped on them, and if you grab two reins, two legs, it's like the big cat's jumped on them and go, and you get that response. And it's like a tube of toothpaste. It just
So that's why when you've got the kids at Pony Club and the horse bolts, it's because they've been threatened. And you know, Gavin, because we're talking to you, it gives us an idea of what happens in our own bodies when we're under threat and when we have somatic pain. Whatever the pain is or the inflammation, it's just like there's a predator on the horse's back, isn't it?
The minute the human's hands do this on the reins, we're in a fight. And it's the worst thing possible. So we have to, and if we apply pressure, it's got to be. So we have to be slow to close, quick to open, but when we're triggered, and then the only way to get us to take the pressure off is this. So when we get tight physically and emotionally, the horse gets tight. So the hardest thing to do is yawn and just relax. And then put that horse in a curve and move.
Softly.
And never say, stand still, because it's the worst possible thing. If the horse needs to move, let it moving, but you're going to curve it and sideways and move it. So you're dissipating energy. It's never trapped, but it's in that state where it can think.
Could I, for our audience sake, just for a moment, think about our own bodies when we're in somatic pain, when we've got any pain, back pain, headache, anything. We're going to be still, we're going to be tight, we're going to have our jaws tight, we're going to have our hips tight. So as you think about the animal, think about ourselves. And as that pain comes up, the best thing you can do is to actually let it come through, isn't it? Soften yourself so that you can allow the pain to come through. Because the tighter you are, as Gavin was saying about that horse before that was sort of institutionalized and was frightened, that's what happens to us with chronic pain, isn't it? So the body, it needs to be acknowledged, I think. Would that be the best way of describing it, Karen? The body needs to be acknowledged that this is happening.
Yeah,
and it's the result of this fear response.
Yeah, so the way that I understand it and why I find polyvagal theory so valuable is that it puts that before the pain. Okay, so we know that tension can create, TMS symptoms and other things. So, but that tension has happened for a reason. right? And so we take it back, and we know tension and squeezing is about the fight-flight response. So there's already a danger. So then we go back. Again, what's the danger? Yeah. So it can take us back. We can now say polyvagal. It means through no fault of our own, we've perceived a danger, and it's going to tighten our muscles because that's the way the body works. Fight, flight.
Yeah.
But the danger was there first. And this is what's out of our awareness. What's dangerous about this situation?
Good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the danger in the situation when someone's sitting in front of you?
Yeah, well, it's going to be different for everybody. Fear of judgment. It could be if it's in an operating theatre, it could be the fear of death. We don't know unless we ask. But what I've found is if we do, and they say, I'm afraid of dying, and I say, I get it, there's no tension. The tension's gone. Because
so it's a relationship that releases
the risk has been identified, and it's been verbalized. It's out in the room. We've got someone saying, yes, that's right, I'm here with you. And even that little interaction is enough to take the tension out and go back into rest and relax. Yeah. I mean, you would never be completely relaxed if you were having surgery, but you wouldn't necessarily have to be in so much fight flight that you've got tension and pain. It can come back to, because, we know what life is like, and people talk about good stress too. There's a certain amount of being healthy to move into that, being able to mobilize. In fact, I do want to mention Stephen Porges has completely rejigged all of the language we use, and he's actually doesn't even talk about fight, flight, freeze. He talks about mobilization and immobilization, and then there's some hybrid states, right? So
say that again, Karen, sorry.
So he talks about, so there's rest and relax, and instead of fight, flight and freeze, he talks about mobilization and immobilization.
Okay, so what's mobilization?
Well, mobilization, again, there's hybrid states. So mobilization is when, the sympathetic comes in and activates the muscles and says, we've got a fight or flight here, right? That's mobilization.
Right. So mobilization in response to fear.
That's correct.
Right. Okay.
So then there's immobilization in response to fear, but there's also mobilization in response to safety and immobilization in response to safety. So
talk to me about that.
Yeah. So fight, flight, when we talk about danger and we want to run away, that's motivated by fear. But if it's motivated by safety and we're having that response, think about things like going out to play footy or having a pillow fight, right? That's mobilization in safety and connection. It's about the team. It's about having fun and a pillow fight, right? So you can have mobilization with safety or mobilization with fear, and they're very different. Yeah. And immobilization in fear could be death feign. I need to pretend I'm dead here so that the attacker won't see me. But immobilization in safety is where we have sex, where we give birth. So we can become very still and incapacitated, not incapacitated, but very passive and in a very vulnerable, immobilized position, but it can feel safe and we can connect there. So there's hybrid states as well.
Yeah. In regard to somatic pain, safety isn't going to bring us to pain, is it?
No. So that's the idea. If we can stay in safety most of the time, there'd be no need for pain, because the autonomic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system are both trying to protect us. And that's another thing we need to remember. Our bodies are trying to protect us every moment of every day. And so if we're in a sense of like a feeling of safety, then there's no need for the sympathetic and the autonomic nervous systems to be firing off to say act or don't act or don't act, because it doesn't need to run, it doesn't need to act. It can just be safe.
Yeah. Would you actually now, talking about safety, isn't it a different, like, chemical type response? Safety would mean like serotonin or oxycontin, what do you call it?
Well, this is,
I'm just thinking that it's a different combination.
It's interesting because this is why the study of the vagus nerve is so helpful, because fight flight is actually our natural state. And what happens is when we can relax, it puts a brake on. It's called the vagal brake, and it stops us, and then we can relax. Okay, so we are actually wired to be ready to go all the time.
Yep.
But when it's like take a breather, it's like we put the brake on, like biologically our vagus can go, all right, there's no danger, you can stop. And so that vagal brake puts us into either rest, relax, or, you know, it goes too far into immobilization.
So that would be in regard to sleep, would it? Or would it be in regard to relationships? I'm just thinking you're going to be safe if you're sort of like, if people understand you.
Yeah, for sure.
If your community doesn't understand you.
Yeah, so you know, everyone says, oh, you know, you get me, or birds of a feather flock together. I mean, these ideas that if you're in a community where you feel accepted for who you are, that sends you safety to then even more be yourself and to relax and to feel safe.
Yeah. So how do we translate that back to someone with somatic pain? Because I mean, at the bottom line is that, like, we've got Christy here, and I can't figure out. See, without my beloved Tovah, I can't remember how to put that question on the main screen. Show maybe.
No, I can see it. She said, thank you for sharing that. I often feel I'm stuck in a combination of states. That's beautiful. And then there's a little beautiful baby there. So with a perfect little nervous system that then, yeah, we can understand each other from those states, and to know that your nervous system's on your side and that it's going to be there to protect you, and then just go back. What's the risk here? What's the danger here? There's nothing wrong with you, right? There's nothing wrong with you. There's been a perceived threat. Let's understand that. Baby is 10. They're all babies. Happy Mother's Day for yesterday.
It's today for America.
Oh,
it's Sunday evening.
Yeah.
So happy Mother's Day to all mothers, if it's still, what do you call it? Mother's Day for you, wherever you are in the world. Yeah. Thanks, Christy. Can we just for a moment talk about this feeling I'm stuck in a combination of states? Christy, can you describe what that means, please? Are you able to type it? Are you able to sort of, yeah? Okay, how do we get our system calm? Says Susan.
Yeah, so how do we, so there are things, you know, like we did that basic exercise right at the beginning. So you can, I don't know if it's available on Google. It's certainly available there's, let me just find, there's a book called PolyVagal Theory, and it teaches the exercise. So if you could get that book, you know, so it's accessing the healing power of the vagus nerve. So that's available at libraries, or you could buy it online, and it describes some of these exercises. But the basic one is to clasp your hands like that, and then you put it, excuse me, Gavin, at the back of your head like that, and you can lie down and do it. In fact, it's good to practice in the beginning to do that. Oh, I've already sighed, right? And I haven't moved my eyes. So you do that, and then you move your eyes to the right as far as you can for 30 seconds to 60 seconds, and you will eventually either sigh or yawn, and you know that's then the message. You're calming your dorsal vagal. I'm safe. And then you do it to the left. for 30 seconds or a minute.
So you keep your head straight and you move only your eyes.
Your eyes, yeah. And it just, it makes me think of a friend of mine. She said, "Oh, hang on, I've just got to put my glasses on so I can hear you better," And it's a perfect example of trust yourself until the science shows up, because the cranial nerves for the eyes and the ears are so closely connected that it does impact your hearing if you can see better, and vice versa. So, if you're having that experience and it seems funny because science doesn't explain it, just trust yourself that something's going on in your body, and that that is your experience, and there's something very real going on that we can be curious about trying to explain. And another way people know if they don't feel safe, but there's also a diagnostic test. Everyone's got a mobile phone, right, with a flashlight on it. If you get your toothbrush and hold your tongue down, look at your uvula, it's in the middle, and you go, if that deviates to the left or the right, you're not in a sense of safety. There's something going on with your cranial nerves that are overactivated, right? But you can do a test and see, people know if they're stressed, right? But if you really want to be scientific about it, you can have a look, because everything about our cranial nerves, the face, the hearing, it's all about survival, how we communicate. It's all about movement of the face. And so that sends a message, you're safe, if you can alter those things. Yeah.
Christy, I was wondering if you would say, you said you often feel stuck in a combination of states. Would it be okay if you can actually hone in on what some of those states are, so that we can have a look at that?
So while she's typing, Rose, because, I don't want her to feel under pressure, but go away and type your experience, Christy. But I'll just give a quick example while we're chatting. Like, as mental health professionals, Rose, we meet people with bipolar, but that can be explained by PolyVagal theory, a quick in and out of mania and depression. It's just, all it is the vagus nerve triggering to different states, over a number of days, up and down, and not much time in the middle. So, people with bipolar, when they explain what it's like in those states, we hear very clearly, if we understand polyvagal, that they're actually describing fight, flight, and then they're describing freeze. So they're, because it's not, freeze is so many different things, isn't it? It's not just, it can be avoiding, it can be gaming, just on your Xbox or something like that. These can all be freeze states, because what they're not is social, and social is safe and secure.
No, say that again, because I'm thinking of like addictions and things as you talk.
Yeah. So if someone's, maybe just chilling and watching TV for 12 hours a day, that can be dorsal vagal, that can be the freeze state, because it's just the inability to, my partner's home and let's have a chat about the day, right? They're in Gavin's looking at me like that, and I'll share a personal story, right? If I go to work in a shift at the hospital, I'm there for 10 hours, and then I'll do, an hour of driving each way, and I come home and Gavin's ready to connect, for example. And I don't want to talk. I just want to go and have a shower and my food and go to bed. I now understand I'm in dorsal vagal, right? So I can say to Gavin, I haven't realized that my caring through the day, interacting with patients, has been so overwhelming, because if I really told him what my day was like, it would be overwhelming. We went to ED to, see road trauma, or with, the crisis that's occurred in the obstetric theatre. These things happen, impact our nervous system, and I come home shut down. So I'm not ready to engage. It takes time, have the shower, have something to eat, maybe process a little bit, and then I can, how was your day? Let's have a hug and a kiss. Yeah. So Christy's answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's trying to make a decision, probably. My body will feel hot, heart racing and shaking, striated muscles activated like fight, but also get the urge to get out of a situation and then shut down. So when you think about it in relation to fleeing, perhaps, like a predator, you'd fight, flight, you'd run, and then you'd conserve. And actually, when we talk about the nervous system in mammals, we talk about it being a reptilian when someone's shut down, but actually a crocodile can mobilize really fast, get their prey, and then they go flat. So it's not like it's one or the other. You can actually have enough reserves to do that fight flight, but once the reserves have run out, your reserves have run out. So whether they're emotional or physical, your body will then go into the shutdown. So that will explain that, your body is trying to protect you. You're going to fight, flight, you become activated, but once you've hit that, I can't do it anymore, I just need to go to bed or shut down or turn off or whatever it is that you're going through, that's a message. You need something. You need something then, because you don't have the reserves anymore. You're ready to be looked after, replenished, until you can come back and you'll know you're ready to engage. So I hope that explains your experience of that initial being able to fight, flight, but not having then the reserves and then shutting down. And, we see this a lot in newborn babies because, we have a fight, flight and we get all heart racing, but babies instantly, their heart rate goes slow. They don't have the reserves we have. So they go into bradycardia.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
And so when they're stressed, they poo themselves, the meconium, and they get bradycardic. That's not a typical mammalian response. And that's because their nervous systems are still growing and maturing. They're still having the reptilian response, bradycardia, defecation, flat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Karen and Gavin, our time is almost up.
Gavin, you might want to say one more word. I've taken over the last half.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're waiting.
Do you
might
want
want to say more?
Do you want to say anything more before the hour's up?
Okay, well, with horses, it's all about yourself. You got to figure out what sort of relationship you want, and then you need to be that. And if we're calm and relaxed, they can be calm and relaxed. If we're thinking and non-judgmental, and then I also tell people that it's of no consequence what the horse does. It's what we do that matters, and we're the ones that phrase and actually decide what just happened. If I go to catch a horse and it runs away, I can say it's terrible, or I can be frantically chasing and whining and groveling for them to come back, or I can just turn away and think, I actually never wanted to catch anyway. I'm just looking at that tree over there.
And then the horse gets curious, I bet.
It's like if a person snubs you and you allow yourself to be snubbed, you're snubbed. But if I'm at the supermarket and I go to interact with someone else and they walk off, I just turn over and say, oh, look at that, Vegemite's on special. I'll think I'll get 3 of those jars to myself. And then they might stop and then look at me and think, oh, that didn't work.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that I'd like to say in as we wind up is that if you've got an animal, a cat, a dog, or whatever, they actually can key into your feelings, your emotions, and it often makes a huge difference if you talk to the dog or you take the dog for a walk and you tell the dog your troubles. It eases your troubles. So and Karen and I have found over the years doing therapy, that if a patient has a dog or you have a dog in your therapy room, I loved Karen's Joey, because as soon as someone would get sad, Joey would be up beside them straight away. Yeah. Can you just talk about that for a minute, Karen, before we go?
Well, yeah. So Joey recognised when someone was in distress, but pets can also help us because they're a way for us to connect, but without expectation. So when we connect with another person, we've already set up in ourselves some sort of an expectation, which can be a threat or a risk. So connecting with animals often feels safer than connecting with humans, and it's an easier way to start getting that nervous system going by reaching to connect with an animal, because there's no social rules or regulations or baggage and stuff that happens with human to human. So animals can be a really great way to start to understand your nervous system and how it changes you by interacting with an animal. So without the risk of sounding silly or whatever, and just how good it feels to go, oh, I love you, I love you, I love you. I can do that to the dog, but if I did that to Gavin, it might not be the same, but it makes me feel good, right? And so to work without the social expectation of what comes when we react with a work colleague or with parents, children, partners, or patients, that we can start to warm up and become social with our pets as a first step. And that's why they're so amazing, because there's no judgment and they do love us, right? Even if we get it wrong, even if we feel like not engaging, they'll be ready when you're ready. Yeah.
So thank you both for your time. I hope our audience finds this useful and helpful. And it's important to see how we as mammals have the same reaction as other mammals. And that I think the word that comes to me is that sort of sense of respect for ourselves. This is how this fear has come about me, and I can see that I can't switch off the fear yet.
Yeah.
And as you said, this is our natural state. And the fact of social engagement is what allows us to drop it down.
Yes,
but the thing is, if our social engagement isn't quite right, it's not going to settle down. And that's why in ISTDP, for example, we actually talk about your relationships, self-esteem, health anxiety, work, all of those things. We bring that up so that we can see where the social engagement isn't, and where safety isn't being created within our social engagement. So thank you, folks, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.